Hello, my dear friends. Welcome to my channel, or welcome back. It's been a bit. Anybody else overwhelmed? I am so overwhelmed by everything in my life, but I think that the holiday season has definitely amplified everything. I'm to that place where I'm almost seeing the light at the end of the tunnel here. I'm starting to clear away. I'm starting to see some of the floor in my living room. It's that kind of level of overwhelming. So I apologize because I know it's been a really long time since I've posted any videos. And do you know how backed up I am here? How many candles need to be reviewed? Because I have been burning candles, you know, priorities, but I haven't been reviewing them. So my goal, please don't hold me to it. My goal is over the next week and a half to like rapid fire give you guys a lot of videos. And I hate doing that because I think they should be spaced appropriately and judiciously. This is gonna seem a little manic. So you don't need to watch them all at one time. Just, you know, I owe you guys a lot of videos. So starting it out today, we have a double from Bath & Body Works. And I actually teased these two in my thoughts on the candle day for Bath & Body Works. So if you watched that, you probably got a good sense of what I thought about these candles, but here's the formal review. And the candles in question are this one, Happy Hanukkah, in this lovely appropriate blue and white. And then Happy Kwanzaa, which is also in this appropriately colored vessel with amazing wax. Both of them burned down to the whip clips, no problem. Very little sooting on either one of them, and they were both burned very long. The one thing I will say about the burns on both of these, look at that smut. I keep saying this, I will continue to say it. I think they have tweaked their wax formula. I think there's a great deal more soy in these candles than there was before. And that's a telltale mark right there. That smut, that like soy stuff, that residue on there, and the fact that they're not sooting the way that we've all come to recognize and love from Bath & Body Works. And so they're less filthy this year than they have been in the past. And the strength and throw has not been great this year. All of these things and my sleuthing, my conjecture is that they have changed the wax formula. Anyway, close parentheses on that. The one thing I will say about the burns on both of these is that they have used extremely pigmented colored waxes here. I mean, these are like primary color kind of waxes, and they're very deep. And I did notice that sometimes, and you've probably noticed this too if you burn candles a lot, when you have a very deeply colored wax, it does not seem to pull quite as readily, not as easily as lighter colored waxes do. And they seem to kind of clog a little bit the wick. Although, thank God, I didn't really have a whole lot of an issue. Sometimes, especially Happy Hanukkah did burn a little bit on the low side, but it never went to pure puny wicks. So it wasn't, like I said, it wasn't a bad burn on any one of them, but it did take an enormous amount of time for it to pull correctly around the jar. So if you're gonna light one of these up, definitely devote at least a couple of hours to it, because it often took about a couple of hours for it to pull correctly, which is unusual for a Bath & Body Works candle, because usually the Bath & Body Works candles, I mean, some of them pull within 10 or 15 minutes. And definitely, I would say they average between the 15-minute and the 30-minute mark. You have a really good, robust pull on most Bath & Body Works candles. These were kind of an exception, and I think it's partly, at least, due to the colored wax. So just be aware of that. How seasonal are these two? This is one of those lovely years where Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, and Christmas all fall within like 24 hours of each other. And I just think that that's a lovely thing when we're all celebrating together. I think it's fantastic. So very seasonal. I think Kwanzaa is the 26th this year. I think Hanukkah is the 25th this year. And of course, Christmas is the 25th. So like I said, super seasonal candles this week. And these are interesting candles from Bath & Body Works. They really are. And it's it's a little unusual for these holiday offerings to be as nuanced and as sophisticated and as unexpected as these two are. And I don't know all the reasoning for that. I, of course, welcome candles that are more sophisticated, that are more nuanced, that are more out of the box, certainly that are more sophisticated. So I'm happy when Bath & Body Works does this across the board. I'm a huge fan, and it's what keeps me, frankly, coming back to Bath & Body Works. Because otherwise, I would say that their usual bread and butter is a little bit on the basic side for me, a little bit too on the gourmandy side, a little bit too, this is also a shower gel body care-ish, and frankly on kind of the more low end of things in terms of a body care vibe. I don't love that aspect of Bath & Body Works, and frankly, if it's all that they did, I would not come back. But especially with their candles, I mean, they have really built out this aspect of their company, and they really do give quite a lot of candles that are thoughtful, that are balanced, that are sophisticated, that are unexpected, along with a lot of other ones that are very predictable. These are not predictable candles here. And I would say that the Happy Hanukkah one is the most unpredictable, because up to this point, I think for several years, the Happy Hanukkah candle was this amazing like jelly donut kind of fragrance that was very similar to their raspberry thumbprint candle, but I think not the same thing. And it was a gorgeous candle. I mean, gorgeous. Even I could recognize that, and I'm not a gourmand person, and I don't burn donut candles. So sufganiyat is it's like a very famous like Jewish raspberry donut, any kind of donut, but especially a raspberry filled donut during the Hanukkah season. And so it was obvious why that was the selection for the Happy Hanukkah candle. It performed great, and it also got cross appeal because there's so many people who maybe don't necessarily celebrate Hanukkah, but who would buy that candle because of the jelly donut, if you know what I mean. And then if they didn't want the branding of Happy Hanukkah, could put it in a candle sleeve or whatever else, God bless, right? So I actually think that that's a very, very successful candle for them. And I would not be surprised if next year it goes back to that, because this one, I mean, by its very nature, this fragrance is odd. It's very odd, and it's gonna have a very niche-y kind of audience. There's no way that it's gonna sell, or it's gonna have the same kind of broad appeal that like that jelly donut one did. So I really think they need to go back to the jelly donut one. Don't get me wrong, I don't buy the jelly donut candle, but I just think objectively that should be the Happy Hanukkah candle. So these candles all came out in a little, like, I think it was a quartet or maybe at least a trio of candles. This one, and then there was Feliz Navidad, which was like a Mexican hot chocolate candle. There may have been another one. I can't remember what the other one was in that, because I feel like it was a quartet. But obviously they were thinking like holidays around the world, basically. And because the Feliz Navidad one was Mexican hot chocolate, Kent was the one who was speculating like maybe they just wanted like a little bit of a different take on these holiday candles, and they didn't want to do gourmands, which is why they did away with the jelly donut one. He said, but then that doesn't make sense because they left Mexican hot chocolate in the Feliz Navidad candle, which is a very obvious gourmand. And I agree with Kent. Like it's very strange to me, the decision that they made on Hanukkah. It's a very odd decision, and I think not a great one. Not a great one. So I was really curious when I got this candle, and then when I started burning it, like I deliberately went to the website because I was like, what is everybody saying about this candle? There's just so many things that can be said about this candle. And at least initially the reviews were so bad on this candle, but weirdly had more to do with not necessarily the performance of the candle or even the fragrance. It was that there were several people who had commented on the candle. I love this candle. It reminds me of incense at Catholic Mass. And then there were a whole range of other people who just lost their minds and went into orbit. And I think they were upset because the jelly donut candle didn't come back. And they were basically vaguely accusing Bath and Body Works of racism because they were like, they took away a really truly Jewish candle and then gave us a Catholic mass candle. And like, there was just so much ignorance on both sides, frankly. I didn't even know where to start. And I don't want to get super political on you guys. I'm not Jewish. I'm not Catholic, but I will tell you one thing. I love the Jews. You've probably seen my Star of David here. I love the Jews. I've dated Jewish people, and also when I grew up, when I was a child, we were attending Beth Messiah, which is my parents were married under a Jewish canopy. It was kind of one of those evangelical moments that was very Jewish back in the 80s. So I grew up with that, and I grew up with a very Jewish inflected kind of liturgy. And my mother had the Sabbath candles and et cetera, et cetera. So and on top of it, I am a church organist, or I was a church organist. And do you know how many years I've been music directors in Catholic churches? I don't know what kind of incense people are thinking this candle smells like. I've never smelled any Catholic incense that smells like this candle. Now, that being said, there is frankincense. It says welcoming incense and myrrh. And a lot of, to be perfectly honest, most Catholic churches don't use incense on a regular basis unless you're in a very high Catholic church. Or they'll just use it at high feast days. Most of them do not use incense on a regular basis. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that for religious reasons, most of the incense that is burned in the Catholic Church does have some concoction of frankincense and or myrrh in it. But this is by no means an idiosyncratic Catholic thing. They are taking their nod from the Jewish tradition of frankincense and myrrh. It's a very Old Testament, Old Covenant, ancient Israel kind of thing. So the people who were just screaming foul because now you've made a Catholic the Catholics are consciously nodding to a Jewish tradition there of frankincense and myrrh. And I don't spend enough time in the Jewish community to know if frankincense and myrrh is still a very special smell for them and liturgical element, but it certainly was historically. So there's no reason why this can't be a Jewish candle. It's not a Catholic candle. And frankly, like I said, not to get political on you guys, I mean, this came right after the snowed-in candle where we were all accusing Bath and Body Works of racism. I'm a little tired of people just knee-jerk accusing people of racism. I just am. I think, unfortunately, there are many people in this world, too many, who are actually intentionally racist. If you know for a fact, that person or that company did not intend racism, certainly intentionally, but frankly, it's difficult to even accuse them of unintentional racism. Please don't. Let's think better of each other, and let's assume the best rather than the worst, unless a person gives us absolutely no reason to do otherwise. That's just my 2 cents, and I'm sorry I'll get off my soapbox right now, but I really think this has got to stop. Yes, the jelly donut was very evocative of a certain food for the Jewish tradition, but with Mexican hot chocolate, there's a very thin line between you know how you appropriate another culture and then you identify them in kind of a hokey way with a certain thing, and that can also be insulting on a certain level, right? Why don't we have a Jewish candle that's more sophisticated, that's deeper, that's a little bit more unexpected? Does it have to just be a jelly donut, right? I just think on no level do we need to be accusing people of racism with this choice. Okay, that's it. I'm gonna let it go. Let's talk about the candle. The notes on these are welcoming incense, warm myrrh, and cozy sandalwood. And man, this is a unique candle. Wow. I don't even frankly know where to start with it. I've never smelled anything like this. And yes, there are some familiar elements in it. it's got to be a new candle. It's got to be a new fragrance for them. I don't think that this has been in the Bath & Body Works catalog up to this point. This is a very strange push and pull candle because it has a very distinctly warm element to it, but it also kind of has a cool element to it. And frankly, I don't know if they go together, but there's definitely a attempt here. And I think that that's what makes this such an unusual candle, partly that collision of warm and cool. I also found it to be a little bit overwhelming, and a lot of that is the incense note with, I think, a very heavy like amber honey dimension. By the way, honey is a very important like food element from like Jewish culture as well. To me, it smells honey-ish. More honey than like that one candle that was like, what was it? Warm vanilla honey or whatever else that came out in the fall. There was supposed to be like honey with neroli and whatnot, and it really didn't have much honey in it. This actually does have a more discernible honey note in it, which I think is really beautiful. And it's mixed in with that very warm amber note. And then with an amber goes those incense notes very nicely, because an amber note often does kind of lean in a kind of a musky, spicy direction generally. And so that with the incense, that works really well. And then with the honey, but then there's this aspect of the candle that is cool. And by cool, I mean almost aquatic. And I'm wondering if like the color of the wax is like messing with my mind psychologically, but I would swear that I smell something that is slightly aquatic to my nose. It's like a deep aquatic with the amber, with the incense. And that's what I mean by like the warm and the cool and the heavy amber and the honey and the spices. I have to say that this performed fairly well, and I found it to be a bit overwhelming. I put it in the back bedroom where I could get it up to like a 7 or a 7.5 easily, and I found it too overwhelming for the back bedroom. In the open concept, it was more of a soft 6 or 6.5, which was good considering that the fragrance is heavy and strange. It's strange. It's a very acquired taste. I think it's pleasant, but like I said, it almost seems a little too strange over pleasant, to be honest. What I applaud Bath & Body Works for is thinking outside the box and giving us something different, something sophisticated, something, frankly, that you would expect from like a bougier company, to be perfectly honest. And I love that. I love that. And even if it's a miss, I still love it. I still want them to continue doing that. And like I said, I suspect that in some ways, like I kind of appreciate the fact that they were like, we've done like a very basic jelly donut for the Jews, like for 5 years in a row. Let's do something that interjects some Jewish elements that's like a sophisticated conceptual. Like, I think it's fantastic. Do I think that they should go back to jelly donut next year? Yes, I do. Yes, I do. For a whole host of reasons. But I kind of like that they mixed it up for a year. I did. Yeah, it was overwhelming at a 7 or 7.5 in the back bedroom, but it really burned very well and was consistently high volume. So I do recommend it, with the caveat being that you really need to make sure that you like this fragrance. But if you're the kind of person that, like me, likes something a bit unusual, likes something a little bit more sophisticated and nuanced, wants to smell a candle that I haven't smelled before, and at an amazing price point from Bath & Body Works, then I would encourage you to check it out too. I'm sure this will be in the semi-annual sale. So that's Happy Hanukkah. I like it. I like it. I just think it's odd. And I suspect that there weren't too many people who loved it. Not enough people who would love it enough to keep this candle coming back. I guess it could be maybe marketed as something else. But to be perfectly honest, I don't know what that concept would be. I just don't. Let's talk about Kwanzaa. Kwanzaa was a much more successful candle, much more. A little less unusual, a little bit more basic, but also more pleasing and more successful across the board. So a little bit more stripped down, a little bit less like nuanced, not quite as many elements in this candle, a little more streamlined, but very similar notes to Happy Hanukkah. They don't smell alike, but they do kind of, they do, oh gosh, words are failing me right now. They do pull from the same kind of category, at least for certain notes. So the notes here are aromatic frankincense, which is in fact usually a pretty prominent note in many incenses. Warm amber, which I think there's a good deal of amber in the Hanukkah candle as well. And weirdly, soft tonka bean. I don't think this is a particularly creamy candle. And if there's tonka bean in here, what it's contributing is that it's cutting, I think, the overwhelming and heavy nature of the amber. And so in that sense, if it's here, it's probably playing a very welcome part, but it's not a part that you're going to be able to smell, if that makes sense. So a la Happy Hanukkah, but also with other candles, even from Bath & Body Works, amber can go heavy very quickly. And then when you're adding it to like a very deep, spicy, funky incense, it can go even more overwhelming fast. This candle, I think, is so successful because it stays in the mid-range as opposed to like a really deep bassy range that could just get very muddy and, like I said, overwhelming and heavy. It stayed up in the mid-range and it glows. I mean, it is just the most warm fragrance. There's an enormous amount of sweetness here, and it doesn't have that odd cool element like there is in Hanukkah. So it's just a warm, 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 warm candle, which feels great too during the holiday season and probably in January and February as well. This is a beautiful amber spice candle. It really is, and it's sweet and it's light. And if the tonka bean is contributing to that like lighter dimension or that lighter vibe, I think it's so great. I really do. I like amber, but like I said, I think it can go really heavy really quick. This reminds me of the kind of amber elements that Harry Slatkin uses. Harry Slatkin seems to use amber in almost every single one of his candles to greater or lesser degrees, but he also has a really fantastic amber fragrance note that is, again, high, light, but still rich and just so warm and pleasing. It's a very pleasing amber. And it's a welcome contribution to most of his fragrances. Sometimes I think it's overdone a little bit, but I cannot not acknowledge that, or I have to acknowledge, that was a double negative. I have to acknowledge that his amber note is fantastic, right? And this reminds me very much of his kind of amber note. But on top of it, it is like a fully through and through amber candle. And because of the richness, even though it's a high and bright amber, there's a richness and a depth to this amber that allows it to be the leading lady with just a little bit of spice to kind of round it out. I think it's a very good candle. It's very successful. I would love another one. And the performance on it wasn't bad. The first couple burns that I had for it were not good. They were like in the 4 range. And I was like, oh, here we go. Like this candle is just not going to perform. After the second burn, it came into its own. And then it was consistently in like the 6 range. I would say 6 to 6.5, depending upon where it was placed in the house. But even in the open concept, I could get it up to a 6 past that point. So I do recommend it. There were a few burns at the bottom too that were very reminiscent of the top burns, i.e. in that 4 range. But the heart of the candle, the strong heart of the candle was a solid 6, 6.5, maybe even a 7, depending upon how long that you burn it and what space you're burning it in. So I thought it was really, really good. I was expecting to have so many caveats and be like, I don't know that I can recommend this. It didn't perform as well as I thought it would, or at least it was erratic. But I would say that more burns than not on this candle were strongly in the 6 to 7 range. So So I do really highly recommend it. And I think it is a gorgeous amber. Greg from All About Candles loves his amber. And I didn't see that he picked this up. So Greg, if you're watching, you should really pick this one up. I think that you'll really, really like it. Bath & Body Works doesn't always handle amber in the best of ways, and often pairs up the amber with like a very heavy masculine note, like a teak wood or something like that, which is just too much. It's too much. So I can't think of that many candles from Bath & Body Works that showcase amber in such like a focused, undistracted kind of way. And it really also be a beautifully gorgeous amber note. It's really beautiful. And I think it's a new fragrance, ? I don't think I've smelled this from Bath & Body Works. So this is fantastic. Yes, I would pick up another one of these. Again, probably in semi-annual, but yes, fantastic and very apropos, I think, for the cultural vibe of Kwanzaa as well. So it is kind of a very like sub-Saharan or desert-like kind of vibe and cultural feel, smell, etc. And again, it works so beautifully culturally, and also I think just as an amazing fragrance for this time of year, and especially for January, February, or any time that you want to feel cozy, warm, and glowy. Yeah. So I think both candles are successful, but if I had to pick one, it would be Kwanzaa, for sure. Happy Hanukkah was a little bit louder, but given how strange and kind of cacophonous the elements of it are, it's a little off-putting at times and a little overwhelming as well. So I do hope they go back to Jelly Donut, but I give them, again, high marks for originality, for thinking outside the box, for trying something a little different. Yeah. All right, that's what I've got for you. Those are the two candles. I think they're still available right now. I've certainly seen them around in stores. So I don't know that for anybody, these two would be considered extremely holiday-ish, especially if your holiday is Christmas. But I do think that they're two great candles that if you're looking to burn something different in January and February, you might really like. So yeah, and of course, they would also do well in the fall period as well. These came out past fall, but they would be fantastic fall candles. That like early September apple range is also a fantastic moment to do your ambers and your honeys and your incensey kind of candles. So yeah, so even if you don't burn either of them for quite some time, you're gonna find a special time to light both of them up, even if it's not Kwanzaa or it's not Hanukkah. That's what I have for you, my friends. Thank you so much for joining me, and I will catch you in the next one.